Hi, this is Denise LaRosa, and you're listening to Mom Talk with Denise LaRosa, where moms get together to share our joys and challenges while also providing listeners with some invaluable resources and information on parenting. Thank you for joining me today. Remember, this show is about you, so please become an active participant by visiting www.deniseandlarosa.com, liking my Facebook page, Mom Talk with Denise LaRosa, and follow me on Twitter at Denise and LaRosa. A Pittsburgh native, Tiffany Huff grew up the youngest of 3 children in a family of love that was plagued by so many of the issues prevalent in society today: drug abuse, teenage pregnancy, gang violence, incarceration, divorce, and poverty. Through it all, Tiffany was the one in the family expected to succeed. She persevered and aspired to great heights, allowing the obstacles to serve as motivation for opportunities. Tiffany soared academically and professionally, but she faced her biggest challenge in her first serious, long-term relationship. For most of her life, she was the best of being who she was expected to be: the straight-A student, the good daughter, the great girlfriend, the perfect working mom, until suddenly she looked up and realized she was in an unhealthy, abusive relationship, overweight, overspent, and unhappy with who she had become. Knowing this was not the story she wanted to tell with her life, Tiffany decided to take a stand that almost cost her her life. The end of her relationship with the father of her children was marked by a bullet wound, a night of terror, and years of healing and transformation. Tiffany's purpose and passion were birthed through the pain she has experienced, and she is now committed to empowering other women to live their lives in purpose, on purpose, through The Best You, where she does speaking, coaching, and blogging to reach women around the world. Tiffany provides workshops, speaking engagements, coaching, and hosts purpose parties and blogs to deliver the knowledge, inspiration, and motivation for women to take action now to begin to live in their purposes. Tiffany studied communication and professional writing at Carlow University and higher education management at the University of Pittsburgh's Graduate School of Education. She serves on the boards for local nonprofits and committed to the cause of serving women who have been faced with the challenge of domestic violence. Tiffany and her work have been featured in the Soul Pit Quarterly, Embrace Life Media, the Mount Magazine, and the Pittsburgh Courier. With all of the media frenzy surrounding the Ray Rice domestic violence controversy, I found it necessary to speak with someone who could provide a personal perspective on domestic violence, while also offering inspiration and encouragement to mothers who may be living a similar nightmare. Please take a listen to our Mom Talk.
So for just bringing a voice to an issue that is a hot topic recently with the events that have happened with Ray Rice and Janae, but unfortunately, I feel like it shouldn't be a hot topic. This is a life that a lot of women live every single moment of every single day, and it's not to be taken lightly. So I guess I'll start first with your journey to motherhood. Tell me a little bit about that.
Wow, my journey to motherhood. Interestingly enough, my journey to motherhood was run during the course of me being in a pretty abusive relationship. My boys actually came at the end. We had probably about 7.5 years in before I had my first son. And then my boys are only about 21 months apart, so they're almost twins. So both of my children were unexpected, but both blessings nonetheless. I always thought I would be the only of my 3 siblings who didn't have children. Because I've been an aunt since I was 7. And so I was the baby, but because I was so young when I became an aunt, I almost already had little sisters and brothers, and I was just like, I do not want any children. So it was pretty surprising, when I found out I was pregnant the first time. And I think I went into a bit of shock, and I was always very nervous about making mistakes. But the beauty of motherhood is that while you teach your child, you also are learning along the way.
Yes, they're your greatest teachers.
Answered your question.
No, it absolutely did, and they are our greatest teachers in life. I feel, I was a school teacher prior to becoming a mom, and I used to always say the saying to the students: "You taught me more than I could have ever taught you," and I feel that way for sure about my 2 girls. They're also 21 months apart, so I know what. Yeah, I know what that's like. Girl, how old are your children now?
They are 8. Well, I'm sorry, my baby just turned 9. So he's 9, and my other son is 10, but he'll be 11 in January.
That's amazing, because you can relate to this then, because I have a 2-year-old and a 4-month-old, so I'm like in the very beginning stages.
Oh, yes. That part was the scariest part for me, because, with your 2-year-old, I would always tell my sister, I'm so afraid that I'm going to leave the car seat, like, on the grocery cart or on top of the car. After I stand, I'm afraid I'll forget the other kid. But I always did. Yeah. I never experienced that. I didn't make the news or anything.
Right. Well, that's good. That's good. But I know what you mean. There's so much running through your mind. And, of course, you know as a mom, like, you're just so attentive to their needs. And so constantly what's on your mind is, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. They need this, they need that. And then you're afraid that you'll miss those things like the car seat. And, I'm right there. I'm in the thick of it, so.
But it's a good time as well. It's a good time.
It really is.
It's pressure, but I think a lot of the pressure we just put on ourselves.
Yes, so true.
Because they have no idea that we're doing it wrong if we're doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm. You're right. You're absolutely right. As long as their basic needs are met and they're getting that love and affection and attention from you, they're good. We're the ones that make it complicated.
Right. Absolutely.
Oh, wow. Well, I love your blog, The Best You, and it really inspires me to be the best me that I can be. And Tiffany, your blog post, Panties, was so touching and just moving, and I actually have so many, it's sad to say, but I have so many relatives, females, that have been at some point or another a victim of domestic violence. So please share with my listeners that blog post and what inspired you to just really put it out there the way you did.
I think that in my experience in our community, domestic violence is kind of like something that just happens. Kind of like, obviously you don't like sign up for it, but if it happens, it's like, okay, well, it'll get better, or it's ignored. And I think that sometimes there's a lack of sensitivity to what a person who is in a domestic violence relationship is actually experiencing, because we are in such a judgmental society and people are just pretty much like, she's so stupid. Why doesn't she just leave? You know what I mean? And so for me, I wanted to give people a different perspective. Not necessarily because you want someone to feel sorry for you, but because people don't really know what you experience when you go through some of the situations that are born out of domestic violence. And honestly, Denise, I didn't plan that post to be the way it was. I really hesitated before I clicked send to publish that post because it was very personal. I kind of sat at the computer and I had an idea in my mind, but I did not intend to, for lack of a better word, expose myself the way I did. But I knew that for it to be received the way it needed to be received, I needed to be open. So it was almost like a journal entry that I never wrote, that I just needed to get out.
Mm-hmm. And that's how it came across to me. It was, and that's amazing because that's how it came across to me. And I just know that it resonates with so many women because it did feel like it could be a journal entry for countless women who have experienced a similar situation. And it was just so eloquently put and just so raw and real. But I just really commend you for doing it because women need a voice, and sometimes when you're in a situation like that, at least my experience with, some people near and dear to me that experienced that, you feel voiceless, you feel powerless. Am I correct? And so to have someone, and so to have someone like you bring a voice to it just was so powerful to me.
I think that's the other part of it, and ironically, I've never really, I don't know that many women do, but I've never really identified myself as a victim of domestic violence. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It was obviously a major thing that happened in my life. Well, the way it ended, I would say, was major. But it was kind of like just this thing that happened. You know what I mean? And, very recently I've just felt so compelled to be that voice because, like you said, people don't have that voice. And, people don't have someone who they feel like they can talk about it with, and that's part of the problem. That's why we are plagued with domestic violence so much in our communities, because when you are suffering, you're embarrassed. You feel like you can't go to anybody. You have to keep it a secret. And, you don't. We have to, it's double-sided. We have to be more willing to share, but we also have to be more willing to listen without judgment when someone does.
Yes. I couldn't agree with you more. And, of course, I'm sure you're going to get asked this question a lot, with putting, your experience out there. But this whole Ray Rice and Janae thing has really disturbed me on so many levels. For that reason, I feel like there is so much judgment and criticism placed on Janae, on the whole situation. It's just been, to me, put certain emphasis on certain aspects of it have just been so misplaced. And like you said, you don't know what women are really truly experiencing, and there's a lack of empathy there in society. And that, well, why don't you just leave? And, that's just stupid. Why is she still there? And, how could she let somebody do that to her? And I just feel like you can't say something like that if you have empathy for someone. You can't even begin to open your mouth and pass judgment the way that so many people have. And so what are your thoughts on this whole, just out of control media frenzy about that situation?
I think that oftentimes people, and it's unfortunate, but I think a lot of people are reacting the way they are expected to. And that's part of why I started The Best You, because I want to give women a place, or create an environment where women are comfortable being themselves, who they are regardless. But I think a lot of the responses that happened are because that's what it was expected. The media is going to play on what people will watch because they want the ratings, and people are going to share or comment or whatever they're doing because that's what they're expected to do. It's outside of the norm to say, what's the lesson here, as opposed to why is she so stupid? You know what I mean? So I think that it's a little bit of monkey see, monkey do, and it's very insensitive. It's very insensitive because everybody has a different agenda, and, just based off what I've seen, nobody's agenda is really in dealing with what the issues are, what needs to be done to kind of rectify what happened or what is happening, not only with the Rices, but like you said, every day in people's homes or in elevators that don't have video cameras. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And so that's our problem. Nobody's asking what. Everybody just wants to know why she stayed. Which, I guess is part of the issue as well, but it's bigger than that.
Right. You're just so right. And it's just so sad because we just constantly see that video. How many weeks later, it just makes me sick to my stomach, literally. We keep seeing this video. How many times have I, and I don't watch TV a whole lot, but I have yet to see, Tiffany, a segment on a show dealing with domestic violence. Let's dissect this situation and see, at the core what is happening and how often this is happening to other women and what can we do to rectify the situation. You don't see that side. It's just so sad. And you're right to think, and to think of how many, like you said, how many elevators don't have cameras in them, how many homes,
And let me just say, whenever, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
When I was shot, I was on the news, and I am, Ray Rice is obviously a headliner, but I was on the news and I was in the newspaper, and I wanted to hide. I actually not long after this happened to me, I moved to North Carolina because I just felt like there was a stigma attached to me here in Pittsburgh. I needed a new place where I could start fresh and not feel like I was being judged because what happened in my personal life became public information. And so the way I feel or felt is magnified probably times 100 when your husband is an NFL player. So I cannot begin to imagine how she feels. She can't probably even go to the grocery store to buy milk.
Mm.
You know what I mean? It's devastating. Outside of the fact that what happened has already been made public display. Now her entire life is just being picked apart nationally and publicly. Not just like in little old Pittsburgh, kind of the way mine was.
Yeah. Oh, it's just so heart-wrenching. And, I feel like the emphasis on, I should ask you, because the emphasis is on why she's still there and, should women stay, should they leave, and why do they stay? And, I feel like the emphasis is that's just so misplaced. But how do you feel about that? I feel like, should the emphasis be on that issue or the fact that there's a domestic violence relationship happening?
I mean, you kind of you can't place emphasis on one or the other without the other, because obviously if she left, there wouldn't be a domestic violence situation, but, what's compelling her to stay? And so it's not just on the surface, why is she still there? You know what I mean? There's something below the surface that's keeping her there. And not only that, there's something happening with him that he feels like he has to, violate her for whatever reason. So it's deeper than just why does she stay, because what can happen is, which nobody really wants to address, but if she could leave, and several things could happen. He could continue to, stalk or harass or whatever, so that could be part of the reason why she doesn't leave, because of fear. But the other thing is, he could just go and get someone else, and they could end up in the same situation.
Mm-hmm.
So, the issue or the questions run much deeper than, the media really wants to spend the time to address. It's more than just why doesn't she change her mailing address, because there are still wounds there that need to be treated.
Yes, and you touched on something that I just cannot let go, that definitely is so important. My question for you is, Tiffany, how did you break the cycle? Because people near and dear to me that have had experiences in domestic violent relationships, some of them have just repeated. The cycle just goes on and on. They'll get out of one violent relationship and go right back into another. Yet there are some that emerged with strength and just were resilient and were able to pick up the pieces and move on. So how do you break that cycle?
Well, I think that for me, and I mean it sounds very simplistic, but in my case, I was in a place during that relationship where I didn't really know it then, but in hindsight I recognized that I loved him more than I loved myself. And so when that is the case, you feel like you have to be with someone else to complete you. And oftentimes, because you feel like you need someone, even if you leave one situation, you may go into another situation where your first instinct is to pacify someone so that you can keep them because you need them. And so you're willing to do whatever you have to do because you don't want to be by yourself. You need that person. So I think that a lot of it comes from insecurity and not giving yourself that time in between to just be with yourself, to just love on yourself, to get to know yourself and recognize that you are awesome and that you know, it's okay to say this is what I deserve, and be okay with being with yourself until you get to the place where you have met or found or, you know, been blessed with someone who appreciates and loves you for you without you feeling like you need to just have someone. So that's what it came down to for me. I got to a place where I just couldn't do it anymore, and I began to realize that, number one, he wasn't going to change, and number two, the person that he loved, I wasn't that person anymore. And so he was trying to force me to be someone who I wasn't, and I just, you know, I was suffocating myself, and I was dying on the inside, and I needed air, so I had to get away.
Yes, and that is just amazing that you were able to overcome so much and do just that. And now bringing back your children into the picture, how do you, I guess for women who have experienced this or are in the middle of it right now, how do you, I don't know if I want to say protect your children, or how, you know, if your children are witness to this or experiencing this, how do you kind of shield them or help them heal as well? Or did you, you know, were they really, really young?
My children were young. They weren't much older than well, my younger son was about 10 or 11 months. So my older son was not quite 3. And my older son woke up when everything happened, but he didn't come out of his room at that very young age. And he never, he couldn't pinpoint what happened, but he had that memory. And it's funny that you ask, but not until earlier this year did I actually reveal to him what really happened, because he kept asking, and I kept, you know, putting him off, or I would change the subject, and they were just at a place like they wanted to know. And what I learned through having the discussion with them that I did have is that you need to be honest with your children. That's not to say that, you know, if you're in that situation, you have to sit down with them and talk to them and say, your daddy hit me every day, or you know what I mean. But being honest with them about the situation, which I was really afraid to do for a number of different reasons. And, you know, after I talked to them about it, my older son, who is definitely wise beyond his years, he said to me, Mom, you were really going to wait until we were grown-ups to tell us this? Like, I can't believe you thought we couldn't handle this. He's like the coolest little 10-year-old kid.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I really think that you have to be, you want to protect your children, obviously. But I think sometimes we don't fairly judge what they can handle. Obviously, you don't want to overburden a 10-year-old child, but I was very selective with the way that I spoke to them about the situation, and they did. It was an emotional conversation, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Now, at that time, when we were staying at the shelter, it's funny, whenever I would get in the car with my dad when I was little, and he didn't feel like he should tell me where we were going, and I would say, Dad, where are we going? And he would say, we're going crazy, you know, just because, and I would laugh. And so whenever we started staying at that shelter, I want to say maybe the first or second time we were on our way there, my older son asked, where are we going? And I said, crazy. And he held on to that, that the place where we were was called crazy. And it's funny to me now, because even years later, you know, when we rode by some time ago, he said, remember that place right there? Crazy. And it's kind of like he really held on to that. So, and I know he's smart, which is why I didn't want to say we're going to this shelter, because I was embarrassed. And God forbid we would be at a family member's house or someone's house who didn't know that's where we were staying, and he'd say, when are we going back to the shelter? So I didn't necessarily want to coin it crazy. I said that just in passing that one time, but he held on to that. So I think that you have to be able to protect your children, but also be able to be honest with them, because they're going to love you through it. When you don't have anybody else, they are right there. And even if you aren't honest with them, they know when you're hurting. They know when something's wrong. And they hurt too.
Yes. Yes,
I was
they do.
in that mine were younger, though. it's obviously a lot harder when your children are older and they're much more cognizant of what's going on.
Mm-hmm. But I'm sure you would, there are resources out there and, developmentally and age-appropriate ways to deal with that, But I get what you're saying, Tiffany, and the heart of it is just be honest.
Yes.
And that's powerful, and that's a huge piece of advice and a very valuable piece of advice. And as far as what does that look like for different ages, it may be a different approach, but the core of what you're saying is to be honest.
Right.
Mm.
Which is,
so,
and I will also say, though, that it's hard to do because it's hard to be honest with yourself that you're allowing or that you're choosing or that you're allowing yourself to be in that situation. It's hard to look yourself in the mirror and admit that. So it's even more difficult, obviously, to have that kind of conversation with your child. So I don't want to downplay or take away from the fact that that is difficult to do.
Yes. So you just have to take it one step, one moment, 1 second at a time.
Right.
Mm. Well, you just continue to do great work, and you have a lot going on, and it's just really something that is a valuable resource for women is your blog, The Best You, and you have the Women in Purpose campaign. Tell us about that.
Well, part of the reason, like I said, that part of the mission of The Best You is actually to build a community of women who are empowered to live authentically as their best selves. And so I started the Women in Purpose campaign this past August to begin to, introduce, for lack of a better word, women to the Best You community and, make other women aware of women who have, taken this journey to being their best selves and live purposefully, and how it has changed their lives and how they're able to help or support other women or other people because of it. And it's really awesome. The Internet is one of the things that I think we take for granted, but to be able to connect women, here locally to other women around the world who are just doing awesome things is powerful. And, even in my case, like I said, I never really wanted to be a voice for domestic violence, but it's often that our purpose is born from our pain. And so the more we're able to say, you know what, this is someone who has gone through something, but it's okay. Look how amazing it turned out. We begin to become more comfortable with who we are, and it's a way to encourage other women to share their stories, because nothing that we go through is in vain. And if you share your story, it may really have an effect on one person and change their lives. And so that's the point of the Women in Purpose campaign. And also to just let women know, your name doesn't have to be up in lights for what you're doing to have purpose. Little things are big.
Mhm. I love that. I love what you're doing. I love it, love it, love it. And I just highly encourage everyone to hop over to your blog and check it out. And you can go ahead now and just give the web address.
Right now the web address is Tiffany, Tiffany Huff, HUF as in Frank, F as in Frank.com. And there you can get information both on the Women in Purpose campaign and the event for domestic violence awareness. Yes,
and let's talk about that event. It is the title is just genius, and it seems like it's inspired by, it is inspired by your blog post, Panties. And so it's the Best Used, the Purpose Party, Panties and Pumps. Tell us about that.
Okay, well, this is actually the inaugural Purpose Party. The vision that I have is that there will be a series of Purpose Parties, and it's pretty self-explanatory, but these will be parties for a purpose. So, we celebrate everything. We go to parties when people get a new job. We go to parties when people leave a job. We celebrate everything, and not often enough do we celebrate the things that are shunned. And so I thought it was important for us to come together, to encourage each other, to empower each other, to kind of celebrate the fact that there are women who are around us that we may not know, but that can be supportive and kind of, like I said, begin to build that community of women that we can have when we need them, but also to bring awareness to the fact that domestic violence is real and we need to pay attention. And so the theme did come from, the blog post birthed the theme sort of because it's a panty drive. And it's funny because I got a lot of inquiries from women, and they were saying, are we just supposed to show up at this party wearing panties and pumps? And that was not necessarily the intent. However, I will not say that you can't do that because if you feel compelled to do that, then that's what you should do. It's part of being the best you, that you do what, is the best for you. But ultimately, this is a ladies' night that will just be about celebrating each other and celebrating each other as victors, not necessarily as victims, whether it's of domestic violence or anything else that you're dealing with, because the fact that you're able to show up means that you are a victor and that you can overcome whatever it is that you may be dealing with. It's going to be a really awesome time. I'm really excited about it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm so excited about it, too. And I just think you're really tapping into something that is a missing piece in our community and in communities across the country. And I just love that it's a panty drive. And so women are to bring, I believe, is it 2 pairs of panties, and they go to the women's shelter of Pittsburgh, correct?
Oh, excuse me. Those, actually, there's no limit. I mean, if you can bring 2 pairs, that's awesome. If you can bring 10, that's awesome. But yes, those panties will be donated to the Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh. And they do need to be new panties.
Yes, please, ladies.
Gently used panties. So they do need to be new. And there's going to be giveaways. There's going to be food. It's going to be a really good time for a good reason. And so I encourage anyone who is free on October 10th from 7 to 10 p.m. to be there. And it's at the Union Project, which is accessible by public transportation if you're not a driver, which is also awesome.
Yes, that is awesome. And I definitely will post more information on this on the Mom Talk Facebook page, on my website, and Blog Talk Radio, and as well as Urban Media Today. You are just amazing and such a bright light for me, a huge inspiration. And like you said, the best you is about, celebrating your victories and the things that you've overcome in life. And I just really appreciate that. And you don't have to be a victim of domestic violence or have that experience. This is for women across the board. And we all have a story. And you just really encourage us to celebrate our story. And I love that.
Yes, thank you so much. And you're right. We do all have a story, and we're not all victims, but you know what? I can assure you that we all know someone who has or is in a domestic violence situation. And, it's easier for us to say, well, it's none of my business, but the fact remains, the fact is that it is your business. If someone that you know or love is in this kind of situation, to turn the other cheek is not the right thing to do. It's your business. And so this is the party to celebrate it being your business.
Right. A lot of things are not our business in life, but that's one thing I couldn't agree with you more is it's everybody's business. If you're aware of, this happening to someone, you definitely need to make it your business for sure. And Tiffany, I guess I'll end with this question, and it's a loaded one. So, take your time or, tell me it's just a loaded question, and we'll leave it at that. But what is your advice to women who are victims of domestic violence? If you could just give them a word of encouragement or some piece of advice from, your heart to theirs, what would it be?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I think that the easy answer is to tell someone. Just tell someone. That's not to say tell someone I would just say to start with telling someone you need an outlet, because oftentimes, like I said, you're so embarrassed by it that your immediate reaction is to begin isolating yourself. And when you do that, the person you're in the relationship with has more power because now it's just you and that person, you know. And so even if for whatever reason you're not ready to leave or you don't want to make a change, tell someone, have an outlet. Don't close yourself off from everybody. Even if you're calling a hotline to talk to someone, talk to someone. You need to have a lifeline. That would be my one piece of advice. Don't completely isolate yourself from everyone else.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. And that is invaluable piece of advice. And I just thank you for, doing this show, joining me on my journey. And it's just truly amazing how, paths cross. And it's always for a reason and a purpose. And
absolutely,
I love that. And I love you. You're just a mother, a woman who is to be admired and appreciated. And thank you for giving a voice to victims of domestic violence. Thank you for giving a voice to all women. Tiffany, you're great.
Hey, Denise, thank you. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I love you for this platform, for celebrating moms, for giving moms a voice that we don't always have the platform or the space to share. So thank you for giving me the opportunity and for your support. And
thank you for tuning in. Be sure to stay in touch with me by visiting www.deniseandlarosa.com. Follow me on Twitter at Denise and LaRosa, on Facebook, Mom Talk with Denise LaRosa, and or email me at deniseandlarosa.com. You can also sign up for my newsletter by emailing newsletter@deniseandlarosa.com. You have been listening to Mom Talk with Denise LaRosa. I will leave you with this quote by Tiffany Huff. Every day when you wake up, you should feel confident to be you, regardless of what anyone expects or has decided you should be. Thank you for listening. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you would like to see more, please do me a favor and subscribe to my YouTube channel or check out some more videos.